Hello everybody, and a very, very warm welcome to the Nürburgring, the legendary circuit here in Germany for the second race of the third round, the 2013 International GT Open. We're on the full Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit today for what promises to be an absolutely fantastic race. The sun is shining, it's a bit chilly, and this being the third stop of 8 in the 2013 season. We've been to Paul Ricard, we've been to Portimao, and here we are at the Nürburgring. My name is Ben Evans. I'll be talking you through today's action, which, as you can see, whilst the weather is seasonally bright and sunny, it is still well below 10 degrees here. And the hardy spectators who've been arriving at the circuit since early this morning, well, they should be in for a treat, but it's not the most comfortable of viewing conditions. That said, the action on the track, I'm sure, will be red hot, as will some of the tempers in the cockpits, as the cars steadily making their way to the grid. You can watch the Bitec McLarens, who were the stars of the first race of the weekend yesterday, claiming victory in the GTS class, because if you're new to the International GT Open, to explain, there are two classes. There is the Super GT class, which is for cars that, broadly speaking, run to GT2 specification, but the GT Open regulations are a little bit wider than that to encourage as many different cars to enter as possible. And then the GTS class, which is for cars, again, that, broadly speaking, run to GT3 regulations. One of the cars in the GTS class is the one that we're seeing at the moment, the Seyfarth Mercedes, in the hands of Jan Seyfarth. Yesterday's race was claimed by the Valois Course Ferrari of Andrea Montermini and Luca Filippi. They headed off the brace of Corvettes. In second place, it was Bert Longin and Diederik Schittoff, and then in third position, Miguel Ramos and Nicky Pastorelli. And it's Pastorelli in the V8 Racing Vodafone Corvette who will start today's race from pole position, the former European Formula 3000 champion. Pastorelli, who has subsequently gone on to have considerable success in GT racing. Right, we've got a car that's gone off on the way to the grid, and that's Matteo Beretta in the AF Course Ferrari. Disaster for Beretta here. Michael Lance were in the wars yesterday, and that a very, very unusual incident for Matteo Beretta. Whether or not he will make it round to the grid remains to be seen. There is Duncan Cameron, whose co-driver Matt Griffin lines up second on the grid in the AF Course Ferrari. He and Griffin victorious in the second race of the second round of the season at Portimao 3 weeks ago, and it was the car that lines up in pole position, Nicky Pastorelli and Miguel Ramos, that was the winner of the first of the races that weekend. So very, very competitive at the front of the pack today. It's a 50-minute race that awaits us, and there is a mandatory pit stop that comes midway through the race between the 20 and 30-minute race duration mark, when they all must come in and make their driver change. For now, though, all very calm and collected on the grid, with the pole sitter Pastorelli just conferring with the V8 Racing team. The Corvette certainly will be very pleased to see that, firstly, it's not raining, and secondly, that it's quite chilly, because that will help them managing the control compound Dunlop tyre that all the cars in the International GT Open run on. And second on the grid, as we mentioned, Matt Griffin in the AF Course Ferrari. Griffin has been a real star of the British GC Championship over the past couple of seasons, and he and Duncan Cameron, having made the switch to AF Course after the first round of the year at Paul Ricard, went from strength to strength at Portimao and remain very, very competitive this weekend. Third on the grid and the first of the GTS runners is Jeroen Bleekemolen, the Dutch driver who, if you were a fan of the A1 GP Championships, probably most familiar to you from that, but again, he has also got significant pedigree racing in sports cars and also the Porsche Super Cup. He's on the GTS podium yesterday and lines up third on the grid today in the car that he is sharing with Emilio de Guida. Fourth on the grid then, Luca Filippi and the Valois Course Ferrari, victorious yesterday. Filippi, the former star of the GP2 Championship. One car making its way still to the grid, that's the Rinaldi Racing Porsche of Vadim Koge. He and Marco Seefried joined in their second event this year, and were looking very competitive yesterday. Fifth on the grid, another Formula One alumni, Giorgio Pantano in the Bitec McLaren that he shares with Rafael Suzuki. And Pantano has been in a feisty mood all weekend. He was runner-up in the GTS class yesterday to his teammate Luis Razia. And Pantano, I think, will fancy his chances maybe to go one better this afternoon. Sixth on the grid then, another of the GTS cars, that is Jan Seyfarth in the Seyfarth Mercedes. Seyfarth very actively in the hunt for a GTS podium yesterday, but he and Nicola Di Marco maybe exchanging a little bit too much paintwork in the closing laps, and it was Seyfarth who was unable to pick his way through and missed out on the opportunity to get on to the rostrum. In all, we saw 23 cars out in qualifying yesterday, and it was Michele Rugolo who emerged in 7th position in the AF Corse Ferrari, this time in the GTS class. Rugolo, another driver with a history of considerable success in the International GT Open, and he and Claudio Sadanovitz have been ever present thus far in the course of the 2013 season. On to 8th in the grid, and Luis Razia in the 2nd of the Biotech McLaren's car that he shares with New Zealander Chris van der Drift, and Razia, of course, who so narrowly missed out on being in Formula 1 this year, but a multiple race winner in GP2 last year, en route to being runner-up in the GP2 Championship, has really adapted very, very well to the rigours of international GT racing, in particular in the International GT Open. The challenge that faces the drivers is that the short 50-minute race is really just 2 sprints of 25 minutes each before the pit stops. Anyway, this is how they line up in full, with Nicky Pastorelli and Matt Griffin on the front row. Row 2, Jerome Bleekemolen and Luca Filippi. Row 3, Giorgio Pantano and Jan Seyfarth. To row 4, Michele Rugolo and Luis Razia. Then row 5, Bert Longin, yesterday's runner-up, and Matteo Beretta, if he's there after that incident on the way to the grid. Row 6, the first of the SMP Russian Bears Ferraris, Kirill Ladygin and Dimitris Tverikos in the Auto Orlando Porsche. Row 7, Joel Kamathius, a former champion, and Nicola Di Marco in his Kessel Ferrari 458. Row 8 of the grid, Brian Lavio making his seasonal debut in the GT Open, and Archie Hamilton in the DriveX Porsche. Row 9, Jan Versluis and Alexander Taukenitzer Senior. Taukenitzer having a difficult weekend thus far. Row 10, Paul Rosell, the Spanish driver in the Russian Ferrari, and Stephen Earle, the American at the wheel of the Kessel Ferrari. Then row 11, Vadim Koge and Stefano Constantini. Before, on row 12, Alan Kalari in the Kessel Ferrari, who actually brought out the red flag that somewhat shortened yesterday's qualifying session for today's race, because if you didn't join us yesterday, to explain, the circuit was utterly enveloped in fog until around about 1 o'clock. It meant that the planned qualifying sessions did not go away, did not happen as originally intended. So what we had was 2 very, very short 15-minute sessions that have given us the grid for the 2 races this weekend. And the second of those 15-minute sessions only actually lasted 11 minutes before Alan Kalari rotated onto the grass and the car got ground on an elevated curb, and that brought out the red flag. The session wasn't restarted. So what that means is we may have 1 or 2 cars on the grid whose drivers will feel that they're slightly out of position. The car's off then on their pace lap. It's a rolling start as in the International GT Open, and I think we could be in for a very, very tight first couple of corners here, because we've mentioned how chilly it is. Some of the racing that has taken place already today in some of the other categories here this weekend, we've seen lots of incidents at the first corner, but in particular this second corner, as the drivers are actually relying on the grip through the left-hander for the first time. We've seen several cars rotating and causing all sorts of bother throughout the pack. The cars all run on a control compound Dunlop tyre, which is very durable. The teams will all try to manage that tyre slightly differently, because some of the cars, such as the Porsche, have got such inherent mechanical grip that whilst they can get a very, very good single lap time out of the tyre, actually managing the grip of the tyre throughout the race is very important for them. So they'll be liking this quite constantly, as will the Corvette with its weight and significant power. Again, quickly works through the tyres, whereas the Ferrari 458 is a little bit more balanced. Cars just swooping downhill, moment through turns 5 and 6. As we look at Nicola Di Marco and Brian Lavio in the midfield. It is Nicky Pastorelli, headlights ablaze, warming around, getting the heat into the tyres. Alongside him, then on the front row of the grid, is Matt Griffin. Now, the other element to explain to you, if you've never seen the International GT Open before, is that the way that performance is handicapped is with additional time given in the pits. And what happens is that the car that wins its class gets an additional 15 seconds into its pit stop. The car that's second in the class, 10 seconds, and the car third in the class, 5 seconds. That can accumulate for up to 3 races to give a maximum of 45 seconds additionally in the pits. Well, yesterday, Matt Griffin and Duncan Cameron were 4th in the Super GT class, so they are carrying no additional time in the pits, whereas the car they're showing the front row of the grid with, Nicky Pastorelli and Miguel Ramos, have got something like an additional 30 seconds in the pit lane, as do Luca Filippi and Andrea Montermini, with additional 10 seconds for Diederik Schittoff and Bert Longin. In the GTS class, with its additional 15 seconds for Luis Razzia and Chris van der Drift, 10 seconds for Giorgio Pantano, and then Jerome Bleekemolen will have to spend an additional 5 seconds in the pits. And given how evenly matched these cars are, given the calibre of the drivers, overcoming those additional pit stop penalties can be a real task. Although last time out, if you joined us in Portimao, you may well recall that Andrea Montermini put together an absolutely storming drive to eventually finish third in the race, despite having started at the very back of the field and spending a considerable additional period in the pits. Looking into the V8 Racing garage of Bert Longin and Diederik Schittoff, who very nearly claimed victory yesterday. It was only in the final 5 minutes or so of the race that Luca Filippi was able to squeeze past Longin as the pace car slows the field down. They form up side by side. It will then be the responsibility of Nicky Pastorelli to take them out of the final turn and then on to the start-finish straight. And when the lights flash to green, then we'll be going racing for 50 minutes here at the Nürburgring for the second time this weekend. The field making an absolutely magnificent sight, with the sunshine really beating off the cars for the first time this weekend, because free practice on Friday was very, very wet. Yesterday, as we were saying earlier, we had fog until lunchtime, and then it was pretty much overcast and dour for the rest of the day. But it's dawned in bright sunshine at the Nürburgring this morning. Perfect conditions for GT racing as the 6th race of the 2013 International GT Open is about to get underway. The cars head through the final turn and on to the start and finish straight. It's the black Vodafone Corvette of Nicky Pastorelli which shares the front row of the grid with the red and white AF Corse Ferrari of Matt Griffin. As away we go, and the field all flying out. We've got problems in the midfield, and spinning around is Joel Comathius, and Comathius in the on-racing Ferrari amazingly missed by the rest of the pack as the leaders arrive into the first turn. It's Pastorelli who leads it from Matt Griffin, and then it's Luca Filippi who climbs up into second as Griffin slithers wide, and some of them all being caught a little bit with the braking zones. Are they all going to cleanly make it through turn 2? They are, but it's 3 wide in the middle of the pack, and it's Luis Razzia in the Biotech McLaren who gets slithered out wide as Filippi and Pastorelli go side by side for the lead. Up into third has come Jerome Bleekemolen, and then down to fourth is Matt Griffin. There is Matteo Brettaso, who did make it to the grid, but the field all very tightly bunched. Got somebody with a little bit of smoke pouring forth. That's Jan Seyfarth in the Seyfarth Mercedes. Can't tell, yes, it's bodywork rubbing on the rear tyre. As a result of the incident which saw Dimitris Verikos slowed significantly Auto Orlando Porsche, and also that spin for Joel Comathius. So down into the bottom hairpin. Pastorelli leads, but he's got Filippi right in his tail. Then Jerome Bleekemolen. Midfield all swooping through. And then Matt Griffin, a little bit muted at the moment in fourth, but maybe just taking his time to get the heat into the tyres. And Seyfarth hoping that that bodywork doesn't run onto his tyre too much to cause a puncture for that Seyfarth Mercedes. He's got Nicola DeMarco right in his tail, and then Luis Razzia and Bert Longin as well as they swoop through turns 10 and 11. We've got the AF Corse Porsches flying in formation, and then the Greek driver Dimitris Verikos in the Auto Orlando Sport Porsche. Race leaders arriving then into the chicane, and Luca Filippi all over the tail of Pastorelli. And Pastorelli at this stage would appear to be backing up the rest of the pack maybe, because Bleekemolen is in very close attendance. And then we have got Matt Griffin, he's got Giorgio Pantano right on his tail, and then we've seen a very good start as well, I think, from Kirill Ladygin in the first of the SMP Russian Bears Ferraris out the final turn through to complete the first lap of this 50-minute race. And Luca Filippi contemplating lining up the move on Nicky Pastorelli. Well, Seyfarth electing not to dive into the pits. This is where the battle is maybe, with Nicola DeMarco and then Luis Razzia and Bert Longin swarming all over his tail. DeMarco able to withstand the pressure this time through the first turn, and then head through this very tight and twisty infield section that starts the lap. It's only about 10 years old, and was built to spice up some of the racing Formula 1 and DTM. It certainly has succeeded in doing that. Then come out to turn 4 and back on to the original Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit as constructed in 1984. Swooping downhill, Mr. Verikos makes progress. He dives to the inside of Michele Rugolo in the AF Corse Ferrari. Rugolo then backed up with Archie Hamilton, the DriveX Porsche, right on his tails. We have another look at the start, and rotating around amazingly, not hit by some of his rivals there, Joel Camathius. See, it all got very, very wide. Something like 6 or 7 cars wide, and Camathius trying to take evasive action. Eventually pushed into the pirouette. He's still running, which is the important thing. There he is, climbing up through the field. He's on the tail of Jan Versluis in another of the V8 Racing Corvettes. And this is good progress in these early stages from the former World Touring Car Championship racer, Kirill Ladigan, who is latching himself onto the tail of Giorgio Pantano. They're fighting for second in the GTS class, the class being led by the car currently in third place, the Auto Orlando Sport Porsche of Jerome Bleekemolen. This is the battle, though. Jan Seyfarth backing up the rest of the pack. They really are running as one as they jink through the chicane, having to get the braking points absolutely perfect. And Jan Seyfarth, who's got the local circuit knowledge here, has also got a considerable degree of pace. He's got Nicola Di Marco, Luis Razzia, Bert Longin right on his tail, and Seyfarth slithers out a little bit wide. That's the opening that the former FIA Formula 2 race winner Nicola Di Marco needs. He sprints past in the Kessel Ferrari. Luis Razzia also looks to follow through. Some bodywork goes flying off, as that could rather help Seyfarth, in fact, because pieces of bodywork that were rubbing on the car, which you can see are now trailing behind it, but Seyfarth unable to get the car stopped properly for the first hairpin. Runs out very wide, and has now got Archie Hamilton right onto his tail, so Seyfarth slipping down something like 15th position in the early stages of this third lap of the race. Still, though, Di Marco not really breaking clear of the rest of this swarming pack behind him, as into the pit lane comes Alan Collari in the Kessel Ferrari. Doors open, consultation begins as Brian Lavio looks to make a move in his Corvette, diving to the inside of Stefano Constantini. They are fighting over 15th and 16th position. And just towards the tail end of this scrap being headed up by Nicola Di Marco. It's the fight going on for 7th position. It's Di Marco then in the red and white Kessel Ferrari, just ahead of the Bitech McLaren of Luis Razzia, and then yesterday's runner-up Bert Longin in the V8 Racing Corvette on his tail. They climb up through turns 8 and 9, and then possibly think about setting up for a move into turn 10, which is one of the places that you can make an overtaking manoeuvre here at the Nürburgring. Nobody quite close enough, though, to challenge this time around. So the road then falls downhill very, very steeply as they pick their way through the apex of turn 11 and on towards turn 12. The leading 6 cars, you can see, have broken a long, long way clear of that scrap for 7th position. Certainly Luis Razzia and Bert Longin will be keen to try and move clear of that scrap as quickly as possible, in particular Longin, running in the Super GT class Corvette in a straight line. He should have the advantage, but the GTS cars occasionally just a little bit more nimble through the corners, and Longin thinks about making the move into the final turn on Luis Razzia. Razzia sees him coming, gives him plenty of space, and instead the McLaren driver focuses on getting an excellent run out of the final turn. He's right in the slipstream here behind Di Marco as they flash through on to start the 4th lap of the race, and Di Marco covers the inside line for the hairpin very early. Bert Longin also dives to the inside, and behind Dimitris Deverikos and Matteo Beretta going elbow to elbow as well. The Auto Orlando Porsche pushed out very wide as still Di Marco having to keep his wits about him. In 7th position, he's got Luis Razzia all over his tail. And the Bitech McLaren, Luis Razzia, new team in the International GT Open this season, and they spent the first 2 rounds at Paul Ricard and Portimao really developing that car, and now it's come on song here at the Nürburgring. Jan Seyfarth electing to peel into the pit lane as Archie Hamilton lines up for the move on Matteo Beretta. That was looking very, very tight as Verikos is able to poach the place of Bert Longin. Nicely opportunistic driving there from Dimitris Verikos in the Auto Orlando Porsche, which has been incredibly competitive all season, but not really had the results that it deserves. Yesterday it got a drive-through penalty as a result of some rather over-ambitious overtaking for Isaac Tumlu, Verikos' co-driver. Verikos then in his stint didn't crown himself in glory by making contact with Vadim Koge. Today is a new day, it's a new race, and at the moment Verikos going very strong. He's up into 9th position then in pursuit of Luis Razzia in the Bitech McLaren, who is still unable to find a way past Nicola Di Marco. Archie Hamilton in the DriveX Porsche also looking somewhat frustrated. He didn't get to drive yesterday because his co-driver Nicolo Schiro deposited the car on the gravel trap very early in proceedings. And Hamilton, who announced a couple of weeks ago that he will be racing in a prototype at Le Mans this year, celebrate the anniversary of his grandfather Duncan Hamilton's victory, is right in this midfield scrap, which has also been joined by Stefano Constantini as well, who's on the tail of Michele Rugolo. So we've got the two Ferraris from AF Corse in the shape of Rugolo and then Constantini, the red and blue Ombra Racing Ferrari. All still in this frenetic fight for 7th, and Luis Razia contemplating the move on Nicola Di Marco into the first turn, as Bert Longen also goes to the move on Dimitris Veracos, retakes the place. Really nice move that from Longen, very, very late on the brakes. You can see the car just sliding as the tyres scrabble for grip. But now that Longen's three's still got the Porsche all over his tail, you just wonder whether Di Marco's the cork in the bottle here, and if he gets pushed out wide, maybe by Luis Razia making an overtaking manoeuvre on him, he will plummet several places in one go. In the meantime, we head back up the field to look at the fight that is ongoing between Jerome Bleekemolen and Matt Griffin. Head of the field, it's still Nicky Pastorelli, by the way, who leads the race. Second place is Luca Filippi. And then this, the fight for 3rd and 4th. And Griffin in there, of course, Ferrari, anxious to move clear of Bleekemolen as quickly as he possibly can. Although, what will be in the back of Griffin's mind as well is that provided he can keep Filippi and Pastorelli in sight, that AF Corse Ferrari will be spending significantly less time in the pits when we get to those mid-race pit stops, with the pit window opening in only 10 minutes time now, out of turn 12, then climbing up to the chicane that almost brings us towards the end of the lap. And Griffin is not really quite in a position to challenge Bleekemolen in the Auto Orlando Sport Porsche, which is a very, very tidy combination. Auto Orlando Sport, one of the world's premier Porsche teams. Their cars are always immaculately prepared and always perfectly set up, and Bleekemolen really is absolutely world-class driver as well. And so that is making the task very tricky for Matt Griffin, who nonetheless shows himself in Bleekemolen's mirrors as they head downhill into the braking zone for the opening hairpin. Griffin, though, still unable to really force any sort of an error from Bleekemolen, let alone actually fabricate an opening to try and pick his way past that leading quartet, then breaking clear of Giorgio Pantano and Kiro Ladygin in 5th and 6th. Here's the fight for 7th. No change in order, but Luis Razia tries the move as Bert Longen loses it on the brakes and rotates the V8 Racing Corvette. Well, last time around we saw he was optimistic on the brakes, and that time the ambition rather than outweighed the Artesian. The rear of the car overtakes the front. Bert Longen is going to rejoin in something like 15th position, I'd imagine, as a result of that misdemeanor. All the while, though, still Nicola Di Marco sees off the challenge Luis Razia through the bottom hairpin. Jerome Bleekemolen and Matt Griffin continue to dispute 3rd position. Here is the fight for 7th then, as close as it ever was. Although now Luis Razia just slipped maybe half a car length adrift of Nicola Di Marco. It means he's in the clutches of Dimitris Veracos. And Archie Hamilton all as well, thinking on the move of Matteo Beretta. Here we see Bert Longen spin. He may have just been distracted by the fact that Di Marco and Razia were side by side in front of him. The V8 Racing Corvette pit wall, distinctly unimpressed by their charge's efforts. And Griffin's got a good run here on Bleekemolen as he comes up towards the chicane. With single file there, and unless you've made the manoeuvre stick by the time you've completed your braking, there's no way to try and force your way through, particularly past a driver with the experience of somebody like Jerome Bleekemolen. There's the Pantano and Ladygin battle, still running together in 5th and 6th. Then the fight for 7th. Luis Razia getting increasingly frustrated here behind Nicola Di Marco, but Di Marco not really putting a wheel wrong as Griffin finally makes the move for 3rd position. Now, will he get the Ferrari stopped in time? He does. He meets the apex perfectly, so up into 3rd position there, of course, Ferrari goes Matt Griffin, and now we'll see the true pace at Griffin's disposal. Suspect that they will stay out until the very back end of the pit window, because Matt Griffin, on a good day, is generally a couple of seconds that quicker than his co-driver Duncan Cameron. Nicola Di Marco is continuing to show Luis Razia just how wide a Ferrari 458 can be when you really need it to. Two drivers who've both won a number of single-seater races at international level, making the switch to GT racing, acquitting themselves superbly, as is Dimitris Veracos, who is staying right on their tail. Veracos who has raced a couple of years ago in the GT Open, together with campaigns in the FIA GT3 Championship, but he does give way a couple of years maybe to the charges in front of him, so he's doing a great job in the Autolando Porsche to stay with them. And then just behind we've got Matteo Beretta, Archie Hamilton, Stefano Constantini, Michele Rugolo and Brian Lavio. So 7th through to 14th, all really in one train. There's Lavio sliding in the rear of the Corvette as he powers out of turn 6 down towards the hairpin once more. And they're all single file, all hugging the apex. Matteo Beretta coming under a little bit of fire here from Archie Hamilton, and Hamilton in turn, if he looks in his mirrors, will see that he's got Stefano Constantini right with him. Is Hamilton thinks about to move through the very, very quick swoops of turns 8 and 9, and the DriveX Porsche, it's a Super GT car, so in a straight line it may just have an advantage over the AF Corse Ferrari, and then the AF Corse Ferrari always stops so well, very, very nimble through the mid-speed corners. And we've got the Ombra Racing car, Stefano Constantini, right on Hamilton's tail with Michele Rugolo. Despite that good qualifying position, rather lost out in the early exchanges and has slipped down the pack a little bit. And still Nicola Di Marco driving a very, very wide car. Jan Seyfarth maybe a little bit frustrated with just how wide that car was in the closing stages of yesterday's race. Nothing untoward at all from Di Marco today, just really nice, precise defensive driving, and he's making it very, very difficult for Luis Razzia here, but you know that if Razzia can get through, he will probably pull clear. But he's got a good run now over the start and finish line down towards the braking zone for the opening hairpin, but you can see Di Marco right to the inside line, and there's absolutely nothing that Razzia can do there, because you can't get around on the outside track, as being demonstrated there by Archie Hamilton, who gathers it up just in time to not lose a position to Michele Rugolo. So out of turn 2 comes this absolutely brilliant scrap going on for 7th as Divericos dives to the inside of Luis Razzia, and through he goes up into 8th position. Really nice move that from Dimitris Divericos, and Luis Razzia didn't see it coming, and so it's now Divericos who's about to take his turn on the Kessel Ferrari of Nicola Di Marco, or he would have done had he not made that mistake. He's going to slither out very, very wide. We've got another car into the gravel trap, and that is Matteo Beretta. So Beretta's chances are shot. We've also got into the gravel Stefano Constantini, sporting a fair degree of damage there. So there may or may not have been a little bit of contact. Let's have another look at it. Well, firstly, Divericos makes the mistake. He almost takes a trip to the beach, and then spinning of his own accord, it would appear, was Matteo Beretta and Stefano Constantini just caught in that shuffle, picking up the damage. So once more, as we were, which is Nicola Di Marco busy defending from Luis Razzia, everybody else gaining a couple of places in the queue, with Dimitris Divericos now coming under challenge from Archie Hamilton. Then we've got Michele Rugolo, Brian Lavio doing a very good job here in the Corvette, a former podium finisher in the GT Open alongside Freddie Kramer a couple of years ago. Brian Lavio, Matteo Beretta stalks away. Here Michael Lyons had a pretty difficult weekend in the AF Corse Ferrari. They've got the pace, they're very talented drivers. The luck hasn't gone their way, but Longin continues his climb up through the field as he moves to the inside of Paul Rosell in the Russian Bears Ferrari. That is for 15th position. Here is the race leader, Nicky Pastorelli, his advantage over Luca Filippi, 3.1 seconds. And then we've got Matt Griffin homing on his tail, and now Razzia makes the move on Di Marco. We didn't see the start of it, but we've caught the end of it as they arrive into the Tillman hairpin, but Razzia runs out a little bit wide. Does Di Marco give him the room as they head into turn 2? He certainly does. So finally up into 7th place goes Luis Razzia in the Bitec McLaren. I think we can expect to see the Brazilian driver now making good his escape from Nicola Di Marco, who once more has got Dimitris Divericos on his tail, and we are only 3 minutes away from the pit window opening here at the Nürburgring. So this is the fight for 7th. It is still, as we briefly saw, Nicky Pastorelli leading the race by 3 seconds from Luca Filippi, who's got a further 3 seconds over Matt Griffin in 4th place. Jerome Bleekemolen leading the GTS class. This is a fight going on for 4th in the GTS class, with a couple of Super GT cars in the mix, including Bert Longin, recovering from that spin we saw a couple of laps ago at the turn 1 hairpin. He's on the tail of his teammate Jan Versluis, and Versluis just snatching a break into the bottom hairpin, climbs up the hill, and say that probably Longin's got the pace Jan Versluis. Now, what about Razzia trying to pull clear of Nicola Di Marco here, who's already gained 5 or 6 car lengths? Instead, the battle that's coming together quite nicely. There's Michele Rugolo on the tail of Archie Hamilton and Dimitris Tverakos. Pastorelli leads the way. He has completed now 9 laps of the race and has extended his advantage over Luca Filippi by a couple of tenths of a second on that occasion. There's Filippi in the Vauxhall Ferrari, and he put together a much better lap than Matt Griffin last time through. Griffin somewhat strangely off the pace, so 1:59.6 for Griffin, so he's now slipped to be 7-8 seconds back from the leader, Nicky Pastorelli. But as ever in the International GT Open, the pit window will really change proceedings. There is Matt Griffin, and he does not have additional time to serve in the pit stop. That is the point to make. We've got something like 30 seconds extra in the pits for the 2 cars in front of Matt Griffin, which means if he can keep that proximity to the 2 cars ahead of him, then when he hands over to Duncan Cameron, Cameron should emerge with something like a 20-second lead. It will then be up to Andrea Montermini and Miguel Ramos to try and chase that down. We will be in for a thrilling conclusion to the race. Still, Archie Hamilton, Kelly Rugolo, Dimitris Tverakos, and the 4 of that queue, Nicola Di Marco, continue their battle. We've got the 2 Porsches sandwiched by Ferraris. It's the enduring battle of international GT racing here in the sunlight at the Nürburgring. Then we've got Brian Lavio coming to the pressure from Joel Camathius. Then Bert Longin, who has moved clear of Jan Versluis. Versluis, in turn, has got Alexander Tauknitsa Senior a couple of seconds behind him, busy doing battle with Paul Rosell. So the midfield all very, very tightly grouped. You can see the ground that Luis Razzia has gained over Di Marco. Di Marco's then got Tverakos and Hamilton right on his tail. Archie Hamilton seems to have the pace in that DriveX Porsche. Unfortunately, he's just not been able to craft the opportunity to gain the ground. So this is now the fight for 8th position. It goes all the way down to 14th. So we've still got a large group of cars all constantly up on each other, as the Swiss driver Brian Lavio continues his pursuit of Michele Rugolo. Luca Filippi continues to try and extend his advantage over Matt Griffin as the pit window is open here at the Nürburgring. Jerome Bleekemolen, who leads the GTS class, he will hand over to Emilio De Guida when he brings the Auto Orlando Sport Porsche into the pits. Replay here of Matt Griffin snatching a break in the AF Corse Ferrari. Griffin clearly trying very, very hard at the wheel of his Ferrari 458. And if you just joined us here at the Nürburgring, we have got just under half an hour remaining. The pit window is open and the driver changes are about to begin here. And the first of the cars in is Dimitris Tverakos in the Auto Orlando Sport Porsche. That is to hand over to Isaac Tutumlu. Just behind him is Bert Longin in the V8 Racing Corvette, and that will be the former Dutch Supercar champion Diederik Schüthoff, in fact the reigning Dutch Supercar champion Diederik Schüthoff, who will take over at the wheel of that car. And I think we can expect to see the Corvette climbing up through the field in the remaining 28 or so minutes of the race. Alexander Tauknitsa Senior hands over to Alexander Tauknitsa Junior in the AT Racing Ferrari, a car that has been completely rebuilt after a testing incident on Friday. Tauknitsa Junior in particular has been very, very competitive this year, so again another car to watch climbing up through the order as the race progresses. Now, at what point will Nicky Pastorelli dive into the pits to hand over to Miguel Ramos, his co-driver? The pair of them very evenly matched in terms of pace, but Pastorelli, I think he's going to stay out for another lap as Tutumlu is waved out of the pits by the Auto Orlando Sport team. He's going to emerge from the pits, potentially right in the path of the race leader. It's got a replay of Brian Lavio, attempts to go around the outside of Michele Rugolo, and that's a lovely move from Lavio, and he gains the position. And now Rugolo coming under real pressure from Joel Camathius. So again, Ferraris from rival squads, AF Corse Nombra Racing, going nose to tail, and Lavio's broken clear of Rugolo, is already in a position where he's going to start hassling Archie Hamilton. And Hamilton trying to get himself onto terms with Nicola Di Marco. You can understand maybe why the Auto Orlando Sport team decided to bring Dimitris Tverakos out of that scrap. So here is the race leader, Nicky Pastorelli. He is on his 12th lap, and he leads by 4.2 seconds over Luca Filippi in second position in the Vauxhall Ferrari. Third place then is Matt Griffin, who is now 9 seconds away from the lead, and yes, they've really come out into the traffic, into the pits as well. Comes Luis Razia. That's going to be the New Zealander Chris van der Drift, who takes over from him. Van der Drift, a former champion in the International Formula Master Championship, going back a few years ago. His single-seater career came to a very, very abrupt halt at Brands Hatch in 2010 with a very nasty incident in the Super League formula, and it's great to see Chris back with a regular drive once more at an international level, because he's a driver who really many thought could have gone all the way. Pastorelli continues to get his head down and absolutely charge, trying to give Miguel Ramos as good a possible position to take over from, as we are rapidly hurtling towards half-race distance here at the Nürburgring. This, the 6th race of the 2013 International GT Open. So we've still got 10 races and 5 rounds to go. Following on from the Nürburgring will be at Jerez in the fortnight, then 3 weeks after that at Silverstone before the summer break, when it all reconvenes at Spa before trips to Monza and the season finale in Barcelona. So Luca Filippi looking to put the lap on Isaac Tutumlu. Filippi in 2nd position, both in the race and the championship, because although Filippi and Andrea Montermini have been paired up in the 2nd race at Portimao, it clashed with the Spanish Grand Prix, and Filippi was on commentary duties for Sky Italy. So Andrea Montermini drove that race single-handedly. It means that Montermini has thus assumed the sole championship lead, but such has been the results for the Vlorba-Course Ferrari. Filippi currently 2nd in the standings. Strelli in pursuit of Jan Seyfarth, who continues to circulate, having made that unscheduled pit stop. Unfortunately, very much out of the running, and he'll be handing over to Miguel Toril as part of the pit stop sequence. Very disappointing for Seyfarth. Had high hopes of victory in the GTS class this weekend, Nürburgring, but it's not proved to be the case. So we are at half-race distance, and this is the race leader. Nicky Pastorelli leads by 5 seconds from Luca Filippi, and then in 3rd place we've still got Matt Griffin. So it's the Corvette leading the 2 Ferraris. In the GTS class, it's Jerome Bleekemolen who leads as we switch from one Brian to another. So Brian Lavio hops out, the former NASCAR racer. Brian Wong takes over in the Corvette. Over at AF Course, Claudio Stanvich, who assumes the cockpit for the number 54 car from Michele Rugolo. Now, will Pastorelli come in on this occasion? He doesn't really want to be bottled up behind Jan Seyfarth, because Seyfarth has got an awful lot of pace in that Mercedes, and it is a potential distraction from Pastorelli, but he's not going to pit in on this lap, so certainly one more lap at the head of the field for Nicky Pastorelli as he heads through the final turn, and this will complete the 13th lap of the race in brilliant sunshine here at the Nürburgring. Then we've got Luca Filippi in the background. Filippi now 6.1 seconds off the lead. It's a further 5 or so seconds back to Matt Griffin as well. We'll be in for a fascinating finale to this race as the pit stop penalties work themselves through, and the way things currently stand, it would appear as it was going to be Duncan Cameron who's going to be out in the lead of the race, but then with Andrea Montermini with this car, the number 3 Vlorba-Course Ferrari, Miguel Ramos having taken over from Nicky Pastorelli, the race leader, who will be looking to chase Cameron down. Well, Lorenzo Bontempelli has now taken over the number 51 Kessel Racing Ferrari. We've also got into the pit lane in the Bitech McLaren. That's Giorgio Pantano, who will hand over to Rafael Suzuki. And Pantano, I think, will be very rightly pleased with that performance. He brings the Bitech McLaren in from 5th position, 2nd in the GTS class. And again, for Rafael Suzuki, a good opportunity to bring that car home on the podium. And this is what we rather wondered would happen, with Pastorelli being slightly delayed by the Seyfarth Mercedes. He's now eventually able to slide through at turn 8. And will we see Nicky Pastorelli coming into the pits at the end of this lap? I suspect that we probably will. It's going to then give Miguel Ramos the best part of 20 minutes to try and bring that car home on the podium once more. They've had a good run of results, Ramos and Pastorelli. If they do finish on the rostrum today, it will be their 4th podium in a row, having had at the start of the season at Paul Ricard an absolutely wretched weekend in difficult and damp conditions. The Corvettes in the race were all really spinning like tops. They were really struggling for grip. But we've had sunshine in Portugal, Portimao. We've got sunshine here at the Nürburgring, and a very relaxed Miguel Ramos awaits the race leader, Nicky Pastorelli, who comes in now for his mandatory pit stop So Pastorelli peels into the pits. I suspect we'll also see Luca Filippi and Matt Griffin in on this lap as well. Yes, there is Luca Filippi in the background. So the second place car as well, the Villorba course Ferrari comes in, and Matt Griffin too. So to a halt at the very far end of the pit lane, inside the V8 Racing garage, is Nicky Pastorelli, immediately out of the car. Ramos jumps straight in. The teams do work very hard to orchestrate these pit stops. Likewise, pit stop underway between Andrea Montermini and Luca Filippi. It's Montermini, the former Formula 1 racer, who will take over from Filippi. In the meantime, out on track, a good battle shaping up between Isaac Tutumlu and Lorenzo Bontempelli, and this could well be for a podium position in the GTS class once everything has shaken itself out. So it's Tutumlu in the Auto Orlando Sport Porsche who has been able to jump the Kessel Racing Ferrari by dint of having made that pit stop a lap earlier. The pit's very much a buzz now. Also, at the foreground of your shot, can see Duncan Cameron taking over from Matt Griffin, and Emilio De Guida assuming the controls of the second of the Auto Orlando Sport Porsches from Jerome Bleekemolen, and that is going to be, for them, the car that was leading the GTS class. Remains to see where that will emerge. We've also got Joel Kamakias out of the Ombre Racing Ferrari. That's going to be Mario Cordoni who takes over from him. Cordoni, who by trade is a finance management consultant, very, very successful one at that as well. His business CV was almost as impressive as his racing CV. Cordoni, who won the Gentleman Drivers Trophy in yesterday's race. So Duncan Cameron emerges from the pits, and I would suspect we'll find out at the end of this lap whether or not he has emerged in to lead the race as well. Cameron, who started out as a gentleman driver, yes, he has. The pit stop penalties for the success for the Corvette of Miguel Ramos and the Villorba course Ferrari of Andrea Montermini sets us up very nicely for the next 20 minutes as well, as Ramos and Montermini look to chase down, because here comes Andrea Montermini now, and the pits look to chase down the race leader, Duncan Cameron. And of those three, Cameron is arguably probably the slowest. He's certainly the least experienced. Until this season, he'd done the majority of his racing in the UK. He's been a race winner of the British GT Championship before. He won the second race in Portimao 3 weeks ago. And under the tutelage of Matt Griffin, they've been a very well-established driver pairing for quite some time. He's really developed in terms of pace. He comes up onto the tail of Gabriel Gardel and swoops past him. And then just ahead as well of the Portimao round, they switched from the M-Tech team that they've been running with for many years to AF Course, and both felt it just gave them that step up in preparation and set-up experience that they needed. So this then is the emerging fight for the lead of the race. Duncan Cameron leads. Second place is Miguel Ramos, and third place is Andrea Montermini. At the end of this lap, we'll find out exactly what the exam question for Ramos and Montermini is going to be in terms of the chase down through to the checkered flag. It's Duncan Cameron, though, who leads at the moment. Now, will this be the second victory of the season for Cameron and Matt Griffin, or will it be the second win of the season for Miguel Ramos and Nicky Pastorelli? Alternatively, if Andrea Montermini can pull off another of his miracle drives, that would be he and Luca Filippi's third win of the 2013 campaign, and the double this weekend at the Nürburgring. So accelerating to complete his 15th lap of the race is Duncan Cameron. Got just 18.5 minutes to go here at the Nürburgring, and Cameron leads. But what margin does he lead by? It's going to be a fairly substantial one, because Miguel Ramos is yet to come past our contrary position, which he does. So now Ramos is 14 seconds back from lead the race. It's actually Emilio De Guida in the Auto Orlando Porsche who's come out in second position, and he is fractionally clear of Cameron. Then in fourth place it's Vladislav Maliv. This just behind the fight for fifth and sixth. It's Rafael Suzuki who's demoted into sixth position by Andrea Montermini. Montermini's deficit to the leader, by the way, is 27 seconds, which means that he needs to take something like 1.5 seconds per minute out of Duncan Cameron's lead to stand any chance of claiming victory. Already through into second position then is Miguel Ramos. There's Emilio De Guida in the Auto Orlando Sport Porsche, who is still third in the race and very comfortably leading the GTS class, although he is pulled up behind Gabriel Gardel. Now, in terms of that GTS class battle, it's a 13-second advantage for Emilio De Guida over Vladislav Maliv, who's second in the class in the SMP Russian Bears Ferrari, although he has got Rafael Suzuki in the Bitech McLaren right behind him. So we've got excellent battles shaping up for both the overall race podium and the GTS class podium as well. And now De Guida has been able to clear Gardel. He is getting himself up to pace very nicely. Miguel Ramos, though, is on a little bit of a charge here. At the end of this lap, we'll get the indication of Duncan Cameron's flying lap pace versus that of Miguel Ramos. We follow still the GTS class leader, Emilio De Guida, driver, again, with considerable GT racing experience, and he and Jerome Bleekemolen, a very potent force. It's Miguel Ramos, who was fourth in last year's International GT Open Championship. He had one win along the way, a superb drive at the Hungaroring, where he saw off a swarming pack. This would be a very different victory today if he's able to pull it off, because it really would be a true chase victory. So over the line has come Duncan Cameron, did a lap time of 2 minutes 3.057. Miguel Ramos, he was 13 seconds back last time. He is 12.3. But this time he was 1.7 seconds faster than Duncan Cameron last time through, and with just over 60 minutes remaining, that may or may not be enough for Miguel Ramos. It's going to be very, very tight indeed. Andrea Montermini has come across the line in fourth, and Montermini was fractionally quicker than Ramos. He was exactly 2 seconds quicker than Duncan Cameron, and Montermini is 25.5 seconds back. So I think it's going to be a little bit too much of an ask for Montermini, but it is going to, things stay as they are, continue Montermini's remarkable record of being on the podium in every single race in the 2013 season. Here is the race leader then, Duncan Cameron. Cameron, who, if you're watching in the UK, may well be familiar to you as the founder of MoneySupermarket.com, one of the very popular price comparison websites. He was fourth in last year's British GT Championship, having a win along the way. We've also seen a change for second in the GTS class, and it is Rafael Suzuki, who's moved clear of Vlastislav Maliv, and Maliv having all sorts of bother there as he came out of turn 6, very nearly pitching that car into a spin, and Maliv will be reasonably happy to try and stay on the tail of Rafael Suzuki. It's the fight for fifth in the race overall. And here is the move. No, this is the other Russian Bears Ferrari. That's Chris van der Drift going around the outside of Paul Rosell, and maybe using a slightly shorter route than normally advertised at that chicane. Anyway, he gains the place, van der Drift. So for Václav Maliv, he's got 8 seconds of an advantage over Isaac Tutumlu in the Autolando Sport Porsche. He'll be trying to close in onto his tail. Out of the final turn then, Duncan Cameron through to complete the 17th lap of the race. And what lap time has Cameron done? He's done a very good one, a 2 minutes 1.532. He ups the pace in the AF Course Ferrari. It is going to give him a reasonably substantial advantage over Miguel Ramos, who flashes through, and Ramos just half a second quicker than Duncan Cameron, and that is not enough for Miguel Ramos. He brings the gap down to 11.8 seconds as we then focus on the fight for third position. It's Emilio De Guida currently in third. I suspect that's going to last until the braking zone for the first corner, because Andrea Montermini pulls out of the slipstream, makes the move. Very, very neatly done by Montermini. So he climbs up into third position. Montermini, second a lap quicker than the cars ahead of him. He is 24 seconds back, which means really he needs 12 laps rather than just over 12 minutes. And we have got Chris van der Drift, who's very much in the mood, diving past Gabriel Gardel. He has got Diedrich Schittoff right on his tail. That the fight for 10th and 11th position as they attempt to chase onto the tail of Nicolo Schiro. I think the podium position that's most likely to change is going to be Václav Maliv, who is being caught very, very rapidly by the Autolando Sport Porsche of Isaac Tutumlu. Van der Drift, who was victorious in the GTS class yesterday, has got Schittoff lights flashing on his tail, but they are fighting for position here, so I don't really think that Van der Drift is going to be particularly inclined here to let the Dutchman through. The pair of them are also trying to race their way onto the tail of Lorenzo Bontempelli and Nicolo Schiro, which was the pair of cars you could see just in front of you as they headed down to the hairpin. Van der Drift will use the agility of the Mitech McLaren to very good effect there. He gets a lovely exit from the hairpin. The Corvette should close him a little bit as they head up the hill. The camera angle really doesn't do justice to just how steep that climb is. They then swoop through the very fast chicane. There is the Bontempelli and Schiro battle that they're trying to chase down, which is the fight for 8th and 9th. This then the battle for 10th and 11th position. And Schittoff again fancies his chances looking to the inside of Van der Drift into turn 11. Instead, you just wondered whether or not he'd have been better served to look for a smooth exit from turn 11 and use the power of the Corvette to challenge into the chicane. Maybe that's what he's going to try and do. Nonetheless, again, shows himself to Van der Drift in his mirrors. Van der Drift, though, moves across. Takes not quite the racing line through the chicane, but he takes a line through the chicane that's enough to keep himself behind him. It also means that Roman Mavlanov, is closing right up on to the tail of that group as well. Mavlanov, who was very, very quick yesterday in the Russian Bears Ferrari, the former Renault 2-litre Euro Cup racer. So here is Lorenzo Bontempelli. Behind him, the reigning European F3 Open champion, Nicolo Schiro. Schiro, the car lengths back from Bontempelli. Then we've got the Van der Drift, Shitov and Mavlanov tussle for 10th, 11th and 12th. All the while, the front of the pack as the of course, team watch on. Their man, Duncan Cameron, leads the race by 11.3 seconds over Miguel Ramos. Here is the battle then for the lead of the GTS class, because Emilio de Guida has been caught absolutely comprehensively by Rafael Suzuki. Great stuff here from the Brazilian driver Rafael Suzuki, who has recently been racing in the Japanese Formula 3 Championship amongst other things, and he is potentially poised to make it a double for the Bitec team this weekend in the GTS class. It was teammates Razzia and Van der Drift yesterday who were on the top step of the rostrum, but today it could well be Suzuki and his co-driver Giorgio Pantano. But first of all, Rafael Suzuki has got to make his way past Emilio de Guida, and all the while they've got Vyacheslav Maliv on their tail, and Maliv closing rapidly as well. It would suggest that possibly de Guida is the cork in the bottle here, and that as Suzuki's delayed to get through, it means Vyacheslav Maliv closes up. It also will bring de Guida's Autolando Sport teammate Isaac Tutumlu into the mix very quickly as well, because Tutumlu is only about 4.5 seconds back from that scrap. Through the chicane they come, riding the curbs. Emilio de Guida sliding in the rear of his car. Vyacheslav Maliv having a lot of fun there in the Russian Bez Ferrari, even if it's at all sorts of angles. Maliv, who was second in the Lada Granta Cup in Russia a couple of years ago for going GT Racing Europe. There's Giorgio Pantano waving Rafael Suzuki on. The team jumping on the pit wall, and with very good reason, because into the lead of the GTS class goes Rafael Suzuki. Perfectly judged move on Emilio de Guida. And Vyacheslav Maliv still very much part of that scrap. And then in the back of the shot there, you can see de Guida's teammate Isaac Tutumlu, who's closing in onto this fight. Giorgio Pantano, who's been in the mood all weekend for success, grinning ear to ear. And now that Suzuki's through, he's going to have to try and pull clear, and he's going to be helped in that by the fact that de Guida is busy defending from Maliv. And then we've got Maliv going for a move. He dives to the inside of Emilio de Guida. Beautiful move there. And Vyacheslav Maliv climbs up to second in the GTS class. De Guida's next concern is his teammate Isaac Tutumlu, as he looks to try and stay on the podium here in GTS. The question now is whether or not Maliv has got the pace to get onto terms with Rafael Suzuki. He's certainly backing himself here, isn't he? Because he really is charging. Another look at that move. Very, very late on the brakes there, Vyacheslav Maliv. In the background as well, we've got Lorenzo Bontempelli and Chris Van der Drift trying to join this scrap. Maliv just testing the rallycross properties of a Ferrari 458, and he is coming back towards Rafael Suzuki. I suspect Autolando Sport will have told de Guida to allow Tutumlu through. That change happens, so up into third in the GTS class goes Isaac Tutumlu. And this is what the International GT Open is all about. In the GTS class, we've got the McLaren leading the Ferrari, leading the Porsche. We've got 8.5 minutes remaining, and it's still anybody's race. It is also still anybody's race in the race overall, because Miguel Ramos is now well within 10 seconds of Duncan Cameron. The race all coming together very nicely. This is, in total, the scrap that's going on for 4th position. It covers the cars all the way back to 12th, if you include Roman Mavlanov in that. It's probably the... we've got a spinner, and it is Emilio de Guida who's gone around at the final turn. We didn't see what happened there, but the Autolando Sport Porsche looks to recover. Nicolo Schiro still bottled up behind Lorenzo Bontempelli, with then Chris Van der Drift looming very, very large onto his tail. Just running out a little bit wide there, Nicolo Schiro. Van der Drift trying to close in. And he would really like to put car of Nicolo Schiro between himself and Diedrich Schitthoff, because the V8 Racing Corvette has evidently got a degree of pace. Out then of turn 4, swooping down the hill. Here's the fight for second in the GTS class, because Maleev has been caught by Isaac Tutumlu. It means Raphael Suzuki has got the slight advantage. Then we've got Bontempelli, who's still got Schiro on his tail. I suspect that Maleev is robust in his defence here from Isaac Tutumlu, that this little group will latch itself very shortly onto the battle for second in the GTS class. Lorenzo Bontempelli would very much like to get himself back onto the GTS roster, and once more he's been a visitor a couple of times this season. So he closes up as best he can. Van der Drift still part of that scrap, and then Roman Mavlanov as well. And it's his teammate Vladislav Maleev who is ahead of the fight for second in the GTS class. Raphael Suzuki's taken advantage of this in the Bitec McLaren to try and sprint clear. Got just 6.5 minutes remaining. All the while at the front of the field, Duncan Cameron is being caught actually now very, very quickly by Miguel Ramos as Isaac Tutumlu looks to make the move on Vladislav Maleev, and Maleev turns across him and there's contact between Tutumlu and Maleev. We can see the debris and we can see Maleev pointing in the wrong direction as Tutumlu sports damage. Schiro takes the opportunity to poach the place off Lorenzo Bontempelli, who has now found himself climbing up to third in the GTS class. But for how long? Because he's got Chris van der Drift right on his tail as well. And how long will Tutumlu remain as part of proceedings? It's all going to be very, very tight into the hairpin this time around. Lorenzo Bontempelli stakes his claim to the inside line nice and early. It means van der Drift looks to the outside as they go side by side in the fight for the final spot on the rostrum in the GTS class. Diedrich Schitthoff trying to pick his way through all of that as well in the Corvette, and they've still got Nicolo Schiro just clear of them as again van der Drift's got the run on Bontempelli and goes through. Bontempelli being swarmed from every side because he's got the Corvette looking to the outside and now the inside. He's also under threat of his position as well from Roman Mavlanov in the Russian Bears Ferrari, as we've got problems for Isaac Tutumlu, who pulls off the road in the nick of time as he sees them all fanning out, tries to get the car stopped, and that was very, very smart driving from Isaac Tutumlu as he realised they were 3 wide behind him. Right, now here is the incident. Tutumlu may be a little bit over-optimistic there, although when you looked at it from the other angle, you could also see that there was an air of inevitability about that when Maleev turned across him. And for Isaac Tutumlu and Dimitris Verikos, their run of wretched luck continues because they've been such a quick combination all year, and they, but for some bad luck, will probably be right to the fore of the GTS class. Well, here is Freddie Kramer, who is running in 19th at the moment. Gentleman driver who's got a huge support here this weekend at the Nürburgring. As the V8 Racing team watch on. Here's the race leader, Duncan Cameron, and Cameron leads by 6.3 seconds. Again, Miguel Ramos a second quicker last time around, and it's all going to come down, I think, to how many more laps we've got in this race, and the answer is it's going to be 3 more laps, including the one that they're on. And then Miguel Ramos can be a couple of seconds lap quicker than Duncan Cameron, which he has been on most of the past couple of tours of the circuit. Then we could yet see the challenge for the win. All the while, though, Andrea Montermini, very emphatically the fastest man on the track at the moment. He's the only driver lapping in the sub 2 minute bracket, and he's closing in on Cameron at a rate of 2 seconds a lap as well. Cameron's next obstacle is the car of Miguel Toril in the Seyfarth Mercedes. Toril down in 20th position after the dramas they've had and the necessity of an additional pit stop. So will this be the second win of the year for Duncan Cameron and Matt Griffin in the of course Ferrari, or will we see Miguel Ramos able to very dramatically in the late stage of the race reel in Cameron? The of course team, very, very, very experienced squad, and I would presume they'll be on the radio to Cameron, telling him exactly what sort of lap times he needs to do, praising exactly what Miguel Ramos is doing, and ensuring that Cameron's just able to run at a nice and calm pace. There is Matt Griffin watching the monitor as Cameron comes towards the final couple of corners on the 23rd lap of the race. So there's going to be 2 to go at the end of this one. Miguel Ramos at the intermediate split is 4.9 seconds back from Cameron. This is not done just yet, as Duncan Cameron About to shoot past commentary position now as Miguel Ramos heads out of the final turn. Cameron does a lap time of a 2 minutes 1.984. It's a 2 minutes 0.5 for Miguel Ramos. 1.4 seconds faster was Ramos, and there is Andrea Montermini all the while closing in. He's now within 9 seconds of the lead. Another 3 laps in the race, and you'd say that Montermini would stand a very good chance of winning this one. I don't think he will. In fact, I'd imagine he'll probably stay in third position. It's going to be very, very close by the time they take the checkered flag. And Cameron absolutely cannot afford to make an error here. He accelerates through turn 4 rather, on to down on sweeps at 5 and 6. He's still not got himself onto terms with Miguel Toril. So we've got what appeared to be maybe a little bit of smoke there. Reason for that, don't know. Also got problems for Diedrich Schitthoff, who takes the evasive line through the chicane, looks to rejoin from whence he left, and then has a big spin going into the final turn, and he's beached himself in a very, very exposed position on the edge of the gravel trap there, and that could be very, very good news for Duncan Cameron, because it means there's going to be yellow flags rather covering the final turn, and the rear of the car just breaking away, and that possibly suggests a problem there for Schitthoff rather than drive rarer. It's quite an unusual place to pirouette out of proceedings. So we're into the final minute for lapsed time on the clock. And Duncan Cameron, he's being chased down by Miguel Ramos. The gap was 4.9 seconds when they went into the penultimate lap of the race. I suspect it's going to be a little bit less than that at the end of this lap. It's 3.9 seconds at the first sector. It's 3.3 as they go through sector 2. So Ramos really is charging. And there's going to be one more lap, and he is getting onto terms with Duncan Cameron, and Andrea Montermini is closing up onto the tail of Miguel Ramos, but with 1 lap to go, it rather feels as if maybe Cameron has got just enough of an advantage in his pocket. Over the line goes Cameron with a 2 minutes 2.1, a 2 minutes 0.6 for Miguel Ramos. The gap is down to 3.3 seconds. If there was this lap and 1 more to go, you'd really back Ramos. As it is, I think Duncan Cameron has got just enough time to hold on here. That said, Ramos is driving the wheels off that Corvette, trying to get onto terms with the British driver Duncan Cameron, who weaves his way through turns 3 and 4. He's still got the best part of 3/4 of the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit to negotiate, and he's still got Miguel Toril and Freddie Kramer up ahead of him. And it's eminently possible that they will catch Kramer on this final lap, and now Cameron is within sight of Miguel Ramos. Cameron not putting a wheel wrong as we head towards the bottom point of the circuit, halfway through this final lap of the 6th race of the season. The gap has come down by a second already through the first sector, and the long climb up the hill. And Duncan Cameron, he's still got enough of a margin over Miguel Ramos here. Ramos is trying everything that he possibly can, but he's just not been bringing that gap down quite as quickly as he'd like to. Matt Griffin still looking very anxious on the pit wall. They don't want to see any sort of mistake from Duncan Cameron, who rides over the curb at turn 10. He swoops through turn 11. We're just 3 corners from home now, and it would appear as if Duncan Cameron and Matt Griffin are going to claim their 2nd victory of the year in the AF Corse Ferrari. There's the gap to Miguel Ramos, and you can see that it's just too much for Ramos as Cameron closes in on Toril and Freddie Kramer going through the final chicane. That's the last thing that Duncan Cameron wants, is to catch the slower runners. It's 2.4 seconds though his advantage, and that is going to be more than sufficient. The checker flag is poised, it's ready and waiting, and it's going to be victory in the 2nd race of round 3 of the 2013 International GT Open for AF Corse. And Duncan Cameron and Matt Griffin, 2nd place goes to Miguel Ramos and Nicky Pastrelli, and Andrea Montermini and Luca Filippi complete the podium to continue their absolutely fantastic run of 6 straight podiums rather, which they will be very, very pleased with in the GTS class. It's going to be Rafael Suzuki who takes 4th in the race overall. He wins the GTS class from his teammate Chris van der Drift. So once more, the Biotech McLaren team lock out the podium here at the Nürburgring, with 3rd in the GTS class going the way of Roman Mavlanov and Paul Rosell, who've raced their way up thanks to a storming stint from Mavlanov. really adapted very, very well to the rigours of international GT racing. So waves and thumbs up from Duncan Cameron. And that's one of the best drives I've seen Duncan Cameron put in, because that was under real pressure with two very experienced, very, very quick drivers in the shape of Miguel Ramos and Andrea Montermini chasing them down. The advantage on the line in the end for Cameron was 2.5 seconds, and that was just enough that Cameron needed another lap, another 2 laps, and you'd suspect the result could have been very different for Biotech McLaren in the GTS class. Perfect weekend, a win apiece for each of their cars in the class, and also very, very strong overall finishing positions too. 4th position today for Rafael Suzuki and Giorgio Pantano, with 6th place for Chris van der Drift and Luis Razia in 5th place. I haven't really mentioned them, but that's the best result of the year for the DriveX Porsche team, Nicolo Schiro and Archie Hamilton. I think they can quite rightly feel very, very proud with the way that that car has come on and developed over the course of the first 3 rounds of the season. So from the Nürburgring, we will have just a solitary weekend off before in 2 weeks' time we reconvene in the south of Spain at the Jerez circuit for round 4 of the championship, which will bring us up to midway point of the season. Then in mid-July we head to Silverstone, and then it's a lengthy summer break, some 6 weeks off before going to Spa in early September, Monza in early October, and the season finishing in the second weekend of November at the Circuit de Catalunya in Barcelona. So here then a look at the final results, with the win for Matt Griffin and Duncan Cameron, 2.5 seconds clear of Miguel Ramos and Nicky Pastorelli. That's their 4th podium in a row. And then 3rd place for Andrea Montermini and Luca Filippi, yet to be off the rostrum this season. 4th and victory in the GTS class for Rafael Suzuki and Giorgio Pantano. An excellent 5th for the DriveX Porsche team for Archie Hamilton and Nicolo Schiro, with then 6th for Van der Drift and Razia and Roman Vlanov. Paul Rosell finishing the GTS class in 7th. A race once more very, very low on casualties, but very high on excitement, and in what has been an extremely difficult weekend for the AF Course team. Fantastic win for Matt Griffin and Duncan Cameron, because if you're unaware, there was a very tragic paddock accident here at the Nürburgring on Thursday, which took the life of Pietro Dragliati, who was actually working for Maserati organisation this weekend, but he has been a loyal servant to the AF Course team for many, many years. It was a great shock to the AF Course squad, as indeed with everybody in the GT Open paddock, and so the perfect way to pay tribute with a victory for AF Course here at the Nürburgring. And of course, all of our thoughts with Pietro's friends and family. Handshakes abounding in the Parc Fermé area, and again this sets us up very nicely in terms of the championship, because whilst Montermini and Filippi will be to the fore, Miguel Ramos and Nicky Pastorelli taking the opportunity to take some points out of them, and these are then the provisional standings, with Montermini single-handedly leading the way from Filippi, then Pastorelli and Ramos closing to win 36 points, and just a solitary point back Duncan Cameron and Matt Griffin, who've overhauled the Taucanitzers, who've had a pretty difficult weekend. Luis Razia and Chris van der Drift racing themselves into contention as well, from Miguel Torrell and Giorgio Pantano. So, Matt Griffin and Duncan Cameron debriefing the team about the conditions, saying that there's lots of grit and muck off the racing line, so very difficult conditions, as we take a look then at what was a fairly lurid start to the race, with Joel Comathius spinning in the middle of the field, amazingly avoided by all and sundry, as it was Nicky Pastorelli who took the early advantage from Matt Griffin. Griffin then outbraked himself into the opening hairpin. That gave Luca Filippi the opportunity to squirt through clear of Griffin, as the story of the first half of the race was the epic tussle that was going on for 7th position, headed up by Nicola Di Marco, who withstood the pressure from all covers, including Bert Longin, who rotated himself from contention. Fast and frantic queue formed, including Archie Hamilton in the DriveX Porsche. After the pit stops, though, Duncan Cameron, rather Matt Griffin, swept through the order. Problems for Matteo Beretta and Stefano Constantini. Joel Comathius did a good job of climbing up through the pack, as when the pit window opened, Pastorelli handed over to Miguel Ramos, as Matt Griffin stayed out on the track. Also late into the pits was Filippi turned over to Andrea Montermini So after the pit stops, it was Duncan Cameron who assumed lead of the race as there was a fraught battle going on in the GTS class for GTS Honours. Andrea Montermini was steadily racing his way up the pack to an eventual third position, whilst the chase was on between Duncan Cameron and Miguel Ramos. In the GTS class, it was Emilio De Guida who was initially to the fore, but he had all sorts of dramas and got pushed down the order, most notably by the resurgent Biotech McLarens. It was also have been by Václav Miliv in the SMP Ferrari until he and Isaac Tutumlu came together. Diedrich Schutthoff also rotating himself from contention very late in the race as Duncan Cameron came through all of that to take a fantastic victory for himself and the AF Course team. 2.5 seconds in the event, his winning margin over Miguel Ramos, with Andrea Montermini just another 1.4 seconds back from there. So after 50 minutes of racing, the first 3 cars covered by just 4 seconds, with a delighted Duncan Cameron claiming the honours, with Matt Griffin there to celebrate alongside him in the pit lane. The Nürburgring always gives us plenty of entertainment and dramatic racing in the International GT Open, and this weekend has been no different at all. Well, we've still got 10 races to come, of course, over the course of the 2013 season. But after the first 6 races, it's very much advantage Andrea Montermini and Luca Filippi in the Villorba Course Ferrari. Throughout the field, though, there is always plenty of battling to be seen, and we briefly mentioned the DriveX Porsche charge up the field in the hands of Nicolo Schiro and Archie Hamilton. The Corvette of Miguel Ramos and Nicky Pastorelli is poised should any misfortune befall the Villorba Course Ferrari of Filippi and Montermini. The drivers all enjoying the challenge of the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit, although in the case of Alan Kalari, maybe a little bit too enthusiastic on the curbs on that occasion. The Biotech McLaren team will be delighted with their weekend's work, because those cars at Paul Ricard just over a month ago looked to be very, very difficult to handle, but they have worked very hard to work on the setup. Some very, very high quality drivers, and locking out the GTS podium this weekend, a fine result. So third place in the race overall for Luca Filippi and Andrea Montermini, second for Nicky Pastorelli and Miguel Ramos, and then the win for Duncan Cameron and Matt Griffin onto the top step of the rostrum, and the winning team, of course, being AF Course, with their second win of the season in the International GT Open for 2013. The Italian national anthem then in honour of the winning team, AF Course. And the mechanics giving them a huge ovation down from the pit area just opposite the podium. So after the national anthems, it's time to move on to the presentation of the trophies. First of all, for Andrea Montermini and Luca Filippi. I suspect Andrea's going to need a bigger mantelpiece by the end of this season, because this is the 6th time in 6 races that he's been on the rostrum. Likewise, the 4th time in 4 races for Miguel Ramos and Nicky Pastorelli on the podium, and it's the 2nd trip to the podium this season and the 2nd win for Duncan Cameron and Matt Griffin. The AF Course team, of course, reigning champions with Federico Leo and Jimmy Bruni. AF Course winning the team's trophy. So drivers hoisting the trophies aloft and posing for the photos on the rostrum, and the decision following that tragic incident that claimed the life of Pietro Stragliati not to spray any champagne on the rostrum this weekend in the International GT Open. Take the opportunity to enjoy some of the super slow motion shots of cars at work here at the Nürburgring, bathed admittedly in very chilly June sunshine. Perfect conditions for GT racing And we have had a fantastic race here today and a fantastic pair of races over the course of the weekend. Well, the next set of presentations will be for the GTS class, which has been equally hardly fought this weekend, really. Very, very spectacular stuff. So first of all, in third place for SMP, Russian Bears, Roman Mavlanov and Paul Rosell. And Mavlanov, or rather, no, we have a 20-second penalty that's been given to Mavlanov and Rosell. So in third place, it's Lorenzo Bontempelli and Nicola DiMarco. In second place, Loïc Razia and Chris van der Drift. And then our winners for the Bitec McLaren team, Giorgio Pantano and Rafael Suzuki. National anthem ringing out in honour of the Bitec racing team who are based in Italy. So in third place, we've had a retrospective 20-second penalty handed to Mavlanov and Rosell. That has promoted Lorenzo Bontempelli and Nicola DiMarco up into third place. So the Kessel Racing squad get third place in the GTS class. Second place to add to their victory yesterday for Loïc Razia and Chris van der Drift. And then our winners, Giorgio Pantano and Rafael Suzuki, with Bitec Racing winning the team's trophy again for the second day in a row. And they have had a perfect weekend, first and second in class in both races. Makes it all very ominous for their charge throughout the remainder of the season in the GTS Championship. So all very crowded on the rostrum, lots of smiles and posing with trophies. So that brings to an end our coverage from the third round in the International GT Open at the Nürburgring this weekend. Very much hope that you have enjoyed the action. It's been absolutely spectacular here, thoroughly entertaining, and the drivers celebrate with the champagne.